Welcome back to the channel.
Back to the Pipe Dreams podcast. Today we got a good topic for you today.
It's going to be about marriage and why it's important to get married in the church.
Yes, this is a controversial topic. I'm sure this disease has entered many families. We do come from a very traditional and religious family, and it has seeped into our family. Sadly. And just like I hear many, if not every family has to deal with a similar situation. But that's just a product of living in the secular age, as people call it. Essentially where the culture is just against religiosity and any form of tradition at all. And so then we have to deal with these problems and, try to find solutions. And so I'm just going to talk about some things today regarding, and we're Catholic, by the way, and so the name of this podcast essentially is The Final Attack is on the Family, and that was the Fatima prophecy, essentially, from the miracle of Fatima. For those of you that don't know, it's a miracle that happened in the Catholic Church roughly 100 years ago. It predicted World War I, World War II, and things to come after. And Mary said that the final attack is on the family, and this makes sense metaphysically and theologically. Theologically speaking, it makes sense in our Christian Catholic paradigm, where the family was the first human institution created, and according to the Fatima prophecy, that is also where the ending takes place. So at the end of civilization, the attack is on the family. Metaphysically, it makes sense because all of society is pretty much dependent on the family. So families get together, a man and a woman have children, then enough families getting together and having this over the course of generations creates a community. Several communities, they come together to create a city. You have governors, you have generals. Enough of these big cities, you have a state, and enough states, you have some sort of.
But the thing is, not just a man and a woman, a married man and a woman. They
Correct.
can't just be living together.
Because, for all of human history, for the most part, there's been various views on unions between men and women, and not just men and women, but, multiple men versus multiple women. But essentially, the Christian tradition, the most natural relationship, there's a reason why there's roughly the same amount of men on the planet as there are women. I think there might be a little bit more men, is it? I can't remember. But it kind of makes sense with the labor and warfare lifestyle that men have to take part in, that we have shorter lifespans.
Yeah.
And it also gives way for priesthood. So it makes sense that there wouldn't be a perfect match there. So that just goes to say the whole, everyone's got their soulmate out there, Well, what about the priests? What about warriors? What about everyone that dies single?
Don't believe that Disney Channel bullshit.
And that kind of gets into the first point here of the final attack is on the family is the situation that we have to deal with today are things like Disney. Because before we get into, I'm going to go through a step-by-step process here. I should have talked about this in the beginning. The step-by-step process of how the attack has happened. And I have several points here that we've seen in our own lives, in our own family, friends, society. These things, it's a very common pattern, and I'm just calling out the pattern. And hopefully anyone watching this, if you have any suggestions, throw in the comments. If you have any, just comments in general, if you agree, disagree. And maybe some of these trends can be recognized, and then certain tactics put in place to safeguard your family, essentially, and try to build successful families, because America's not going to get any better by just voting Republican, basically. Yeah. There needs to be
No, one man can't fix it all.
Yeah, you can't just go, well, I'm just going to collect a bunch of guns and vote Republican and go, everything's going to get better, like most people on the right wing end up thinking. There's a culture war that you have to win, and the culture war comes from the root cultus, which is, based on the religion of the cult, essentially, like the religious institution and the priesthood that is like the cult, and the cultist comes from the cult, and that's the culture. And so the culture war is the religious war at its roots, the metaphysical. We need to win at this level before we get to retake the culture. And so let's just get in. The first step is the indoctrination level. It's the social media, the Hollywood, schools, even private schools. Most of them follow the same programming that the states and the federal government push out. And so a lot of the same classes and everything are being promoted to everybody. We're drinking some of this peach. What are we drinking here?
Peach Jello. Just made it about a week ago. I had to wait till it defrosted because you're supposed to keep it in the freezer. I'm not really sure why. My uncle kept all of his in the freezer, but it's peach.
Very thick.
Yeah, it's a thick, almost like a liqueur, but it's about 150 proof, pretty high. And I added last year's peaches that he grew to the still to make this. So.
And I mixed a little bit of mead in mine.
Well, you mixed
watered down a bit.
That was peach elderflower, so that's why I told you to choose that one because it already had peaches in it.
Yeah, so back on topic here. Yeah, so the first thing before we get into the realm of severing the bond between the individual and God, there's the propaganda phase. And it's basically, that's the cultural phase. The planting of the seed it could be, in most cases, people that 100 years ago or more, almost everybody was Christian. And so somebody in your family, if you're in a secular family, somebody has gone through a very similar process of losing their faith and losing any sense of tradition and things like that. And so it essentially stems from like that indoctrination phase and the influences, the social media today we have to deal with. Hollywood, Disney, of course, all the schools and their programming and promoting the drug-induced lifestyle and promiscuity. That's the main problems right there. Most of the shows on TV today would have been considered pornography 100 years ago. It is pornography.
100%.
I mean, there's just people having sex on television on, I'd say, most channels.
Add in the sodomite stuff, too.
Yeah, you have all of the, they were having just normal male and female sex on TV in the 90s and the 80s, 70s. Of course, the next logical step is to, when you have sterile relationships that way, the very next step is just two men or two women doing the same sterile acts, essentially. So there's that problem there. And so these seeds are planted in people's children's head of this is an acceptable lifestyle. I think women very much so, are attracted to the social aspect of things. Community is more, and women are more in line with the needs of the community, whereas men are more motivated by the sexual aspect of things, the actual lust. I think it was Father Chad Ripperger said that lust is men's most, the sin that sends most men to hell, and pride is the one for women, because they're constantly comparing each other and trying to destroy each other's reputations, and men are more obsessed with the flesh. So, the root cause is much of this indoctrination and things like that. And then the very next step is taking action on the propaganda. So essentially this mythos has been created in their head of a permissible lifestyle. And that is the drug-induced lifestyle, and that is the intoxicants. We're not talking about a drink or two, things like that. It's the excessive drinking. It's the taking the drugs. Like, if taking a hit of weed is not the same thing as having a beer. That's an intoxicant. A lot of the drugs are intoxicants. Anything that alters your consciousness really is a mortal sin.
Yeah, because you can't. People turn around and be like, "Oh, I blame it on the alcohol, or
yeah,
the drug," or meanwhile, like, you always said, you have a responsibility to control that.
Yeah, once you're in that state, the act of doing it itself. I was unsure of this whenever I was in college and things like that, but the actual act of getting drunk is itself a mortal sin, and then everything that you're responsible for, because you put yourself in that situation. Of course, there's the exceptions, because everyone's always looking for the exceptions. Of course, if you get drugged, of course there's an exception. But you're putting yourself in that situation and putting others at risk. for your stupidity. But basically, all I'm saying is taking action on all the propaganda films and the culture that that is in high schools.
Yeah, you just think all the shows that you watch constantly, that are on TV. Eventually, if you even are strong in your faith, you start like it slowly is like a psychological. It's like, oh, wait a second, this is normal. Like you're seeing it all everywhere. I mean, most people literally watch TV almost every single day, and you see that all the time,
the thing.
Over and over and over again. It's like, oh,
even at the,
it's like,
I was gonna say, even at the very foundation, it's like a numbers game. Most people don't even pray 20 minutes a day. But if you watch, let's just say someone prays 20 minutes a day, and they're watching an hour to 2 hours of either social media and or video games and or some sort of television, like 2 hours of that compared to 20 minutes of prayer, you're already losing. Mm-hmm. So just doing your 20 minutes of prayer, I mean, that's better than most people are doing, but like that's just not enough. At the numbers level, you're being way more indoctrinated than you are praying. So that's a problem for starters. And
Disney doesn't help. Disney with all those princess movies, like,
oh yeah, just giving
the prince is gonna find the princess and they're gonna live happy ever. Like that's a fantasy right there.
Yeah, and a lot of women are definitely screwed with that indoctrination in their head.
Yeah, and these girls are watching it like 3, 4, 5 years old, like thinking this is gonna be real.
Yeah, until they end up. I mean, basically, this is a sad story. Mm-hmm. This is a very sad case, and I don't think that really too many people should be to blame. Like the family members, everyone is just a victim of this. Mm-hmm. All the parents that have to deal with children leaving the church, going through this process that I'm starting to lay out here. I'm trying to keep this under a half hour, but I don't know. We're already like 10, 20 minutes, 10, 15, 10. Well, no, it looks like 12 minutes into this, but things hundreds of years ago, and I kind of view history like this sometimes, people were using swords for thousands of years. And so, like, it was so easy to pass things on to your children. It's like the lifestyle that I lived is the same exact one that you'll live, and it's the same exact one that he'll live, and for generations. The things that we're dealing with today, us just recording this podcast and, like, having an iPad here, and I can see my recording and my notes as we're filming, and as you have your stuff over there.
New stuff.
There's no way that any parent could have prepared us for this. Mm-hmm. And so the culture war in this technological age is moving so quickly that, in my opinion, like no real like priest could be blamed for this. No family member. I think that the important part is that you just default. In our case, to the for me, I just default to the Catechism of the Catholic Church. That's what everything's spelled out for the lifestyle for us to live. It's hard to just say, well, just follow the Bible, because the Bible is just a book of stories. You need a book of laws, essentially. And the Catechism lays that stuff out. Because not everyone's going to read 73 books of the Bible and then just turn around. Plus there's Protestants and everything. Everyone has their different books and stuff like that. So you need a code to follow, and then you get your Puritans on one side that go, everything technology is bad, get rid of it, and then you have the progressives that go, embrace it all, push it on everybody. It's all progress. Everything that is new is progress, and it's good. So really, it's hard to like. No one's really to blame. It's just an unfortunate case that we're all in, and I'm curious to see where our civilization is gonna.
Yeah, there was that quote from Frankenstein, Mary Shelley, that book. Not all progress in technology is good.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah. And the nuclear bomb, was that good?
No.
Yeah, I'm sure the people that made it.
Well, that's what they were. The whole thing Frankenstein was like, he produced a person, just because it was high technology and it was progress. The thing ended up just destroying all the people in the town, the whole town, But because we had high technology and it was progress, it was not a good thing.
Yeah, and there's always that's sort of like a false dichotomy of like, do you embrace everything or do you embrace nothing? Like, of course, you have to have a balance, right? Mm-hmm. So you're going to be either hardcore, leftist, sexually deprived, liberal, or you're going to be like an Amish person. Like you got to, and then we're just all stuck in the middle trying to find a balance, and then we're just, you're losing people in your family. People are going off the deep end here, leaving the church, and then it's like the family's trying to hold itself together based on what at that point? A culture has to be founded on something, and a family would, if it has multiple different cultures in it, that's just like America. It's one nation of laws, but it's multiple nations within it of many different races and religions and cultures, and it doesn't even, if there was any stress put on the nation, it would immediately divide into its different actual cultures. But anyways, getting back to it, so going through the steps here, there's the indoctrination that happens, then there's the taking action on the propaganda, and really that is the taking into the premarital relations with others or with yourself, and that is, as far as I can tell, a huge high school situation. Like, that's, high school is almost made for people to, and especially college, where you separate from your family. You see like all these, I forget what they call them, girls where they post their prom photos, and then them after graduation of college.
Oh.
And like how they.
It's like the freshman 15, sort of.
Freshman, I don't.
Like you freshman 15, it's like they put on 15 pounds.
Oh no! Well, no, this is like you have long hair, beautiful, and everything like that, and then you're like chop it all off, and it's like pink.
Oh yeah.
And you have like tats.
There's a name for that.
It's like
degeneracy.
But they see it as a good thing. Like, there's that process of like you go from you're like a virgin woman, and then now you're like body count's huge. You have tattoos all over you. You have so many disorders.
Nothing's better than when a girl's like, I need to go find myself. Meanwhile, they just go get plowed by a bunch of men and
I mean,
go to basically college and travel and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's that's the taking action part, and like the system has it set up that where high school is sort of like dipping your toes into it, and then college for most people is going heavy deep in from the age of 18 to 21, 22, of playing out all the fantasies that you were groomed with from the indoctrination phase. And a lot of parents probably aren't even aware of this, but this is the system. And
we know people.
Everybody. We know everybody. Everyone's done that. Like, everyone knows this.
I mean, we basically know up to the point of like someone that was in high school, to the point of the cutting of the hair, to the point of
that's like half the girls we've all ever known.
To dying.
Yeah, we've known.
We know people like that. That's how far it goes.
Yeah.
Because of I'm assuming like
everyone in our age at least has a general idea of that this is going on. It's the Generation X and Boomers that don't have.
Because we started right in the middle. So like there's some of us, 50% of us made it out, and the other 50 are just like, what the hell happened? Like, the people like that I at least graduated, I'm like, that person was a great person. And all of a sudden they're like on drugs and on the verge of death.
I mean, we know multiple people. I've lost count of how many people are dead.
Yep.
I don't know if other generations is like, oh yeah, this person went off the war and they died. This person died in the steel mill.
And they said
everyone we know dies from overdose or suicide.
They said this is the first time in history that this many young people are dying before. Like, this is the first time anyone's ever had to deal with this type of situation.
Yeah, and it's very unfortunate. It's not just men; it's women.
Yeah, like Dad even said like they're rare that someone died of a drug overdose when he was a kid. Now like people are just dropping like flies.
And we're not even in a bad. I can imagine being in the lower class of society.
Yep.
We are like, we've always been around. Like, I literally until high school thought that almost everybody was Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
That's like that's the type of tight circle that our parents raised us in.
Now our cousins would go to the same high school. And there's like, I guarantee there's probably like 20% of those people probably are Catholics, and not even.
Wait, who? School.
No, like our little cousins that went through high school, the same high school we went through.
Oh yeah.
When we went to school, it was probably like a 50% people actually went to church.
Yeah, there used to be a lot of people in
now,
church.
I would doubt that 10-15% of the people go to church that went to the same high school as we did.
Yeah, like everything that I went through and just feeling like I just barely got by. I didn't have a phone, and it wasn't a smartphone, but I didn't have a phone until 9th grade. A lot of those things saved me.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, I just really feel bad for a lot of the mothers and fathers and their children, and that if they just don't even have a clue of what their children are actually going through. And like basically, like if you don't even have like a game plan to attack it, and
Yeah.
really that the problem is like there almost isn't a game plan.
There isn't.
You know, and like it's just the situation that we're in. But basically, yeah. So again, indoctrination phase, and then the taking action phase on the the heavily amount of pornography. I think it's 90% of dudes have seen pornography in the last 90 days. Like something like an unbelievable statistic.
Well, the best statistic is most people are stumbling upon pornography like 8 years old now.
Yeah, that was the statistic like 10 years ago.
It was like 10 years ago. I think it was like 13.
Well, I heard a bishop talk about it like 10 years ago, and he said it was like 10.
I thought they said it was 8 years old.
Like that's like the average age, meaning many of them are below.
Yeah.
So like that, I mean, that is like the biggest thing. Once you see that, your childhood is over.
Yeah, your childhood is over. I mean, if you ever seen the interview where we were saying Miley Cyrus was saying that too?
Yes,
Yeah.
I mean Miley Cyrus was saying that the first sexual experience she had, she couldn't be Hannah Montana anymore.
Yeah, she wasn't. You can almost see it too, if you really.
Yeah,
think
you can
about,
just see it. I think you see it in their eyes.
Well, I'm just saying the show in general.
Like how
there was
dress.
this point where like you knew something changed. It's funny if I would go back and watch. It's not funny, but like if you go back and watch it,
unfortunate.
I guarantee I can point out right when her childhood ended.
Yeah, and you can with women, you can just tell they start dressing differently. They're no longer focused on beauty; they're more on the things
sex
that,
appeal,
like how they can appeal to men in a certain like primal way.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, in this taking action phase, you have basically you have severed once you're in mortal sin. Masturbation, fornication, so that's like sleeping with others, doing acts yourself. You have severed your relationship with God. You are in a state of mortal sin, and you have to essentially repent and, go to confession. And you have to put plans in place to get back in God's grace. But most people in the secular age that we're in aren't doing that, and so you're traumatizing yourself on top of trauma, and a lot of girls I think this guy, at 18 years old, I think this guy's gonna be my husband. He's perfect and everything. I'm just gonna sleep with him, and then you break up, and then but by the time you're out of college, it's 4, 5, 6 dudes, and then you get into the workforce, and it's everybody in the workforce, and then it's a very unfortunate situation, but like that's how these women end up being. Basically, like they have the 1,000 cocks there as people end up saying. It's a sick thing, but like, I mean. You can pretty much, I think the guys can kind of start stiffing that stuff out because women, whenever they're traumatized, they start to show it in a lot of bad ways.
And that's the thing. What future husband is going to want to take on a woman that has that many?
Yeah, and plus
has bonded with that many men.
And plus, like as a woman from a woman's perspective, if a guy has been with a bunch of girls and he has seen a ton of pornography, she is going to be completely self-conscious of how she looks in front of him. So like the relationships going through high school and college, there's a lot of this going on, and then you're in the situation of like no wonder people aren't getting married.
Yeah, because guys have
people are so traumatized, and they don't even know of perversions that they have. That of just it's trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma. I'm gonna correct this trauma with another trauma. It's just more sin upon more sin, and that leaves you to, of course, safeguarding the mortal sin, and that is contraceptives, getting on the birth control. Now you're messing with your hormones. And then now, once the woman's on the hormones, and she's having all these different fluctuations, and she thinks that she's safe from getting pregnant. Now the man just views her as a tool for his pleasure.
Yep.
And so now, after enough of that, of a woman's hormones being changed, she's going crazy enough of all these traumas. Now her hormones are just going off the wall. And now the guy is just viewing her, over time, as just purely a tool.
Yeah. So
St. John Paul II talks about that. Yeah,
because at what point is the guy going to be like, you know what, maybe I should have a kid because he's been seeing her as literally like something to get his rocks off from.
Yeah, I mean, that's all that is.
And then meanwhile, for years, people on birth control for years. Her body has literally acted like it's been pregnant for years because that's what it is. Birth control is like you're tricking your body to act like it's pregnant so you don't get pregnant. I mean, does that sound...
Yeah, this is not a healthy relationship.
Does that sound good at all?
Yeah. Our ancestors would have never had to deal with anything close to this.
They thought they would probably think we're
And I'm only on step 2.
Crazy. Yeah.
Or, step 3 basically of the safeguarding the mortal sin with contraceptives, and then then the complements to that lifestyle. So once you're already taking part in these things that I've brought up so far, I'm talking about the intoxications now. Typically, whenever you're in the realm of sleeping around on the contraceptives, if you're a dude, you're watching the pornography, everyone's watching the films. That's like where we're at now. The complement to this is doing drugs and going to the bars and getting drunk.
Yeah.
And then that doesn't help the situation. That's your weekends just being drained on, I got to go to this place,
it's
get this
pleasure.
photo, and I'm listening, drinking with this person, doing drugs with this person. Just fitting into the culture, anything to convince themselves that they are hip and cool and having a good time, and get that picture, edit it, put it on social media, hope that you get a bunch of likes, then you're chasing that dopamine.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got to think it's also, all that stuff is to just get laid, also.
Yeah, from a dude's perspective.
Yeah.
For women's, it's like trying to undercut each other.
No, yeah, it's who's
the
more
alpha chick.
Yeah.
And then
That's
severing
that's
the ties
what
with
the funniest
God.
thing about it all is.
Yeah. I mean, men and women just view social media differently, relationships differently, but next is just completely severing the ties with God. And this is if you're even still going to church at this time, you quit going to church. At some point, I don't know how people that are at this stage of where I'm talking are even going to church. How can you be receiving the Eucharist? I mean, Protestants, I know that nothing's really a sacrament. I mean, some of them may be Lutherans, some of them have sacraments. But if the Orthodox and Catholic, you have actual sacraments by priests who the apostles put their hands and anointed successors. And they put hands on people and anointed them as successors. The whole way down to our bishop anointing our priests as successors. So, we are receiving the sacraments from them, from the people that Christ himself anointed.
Mm-hmm.
The whole way down the line. At some point, if you're in this horrible state of just sin upon sin upon sin, you're just going to stop going to church. Because your lifestyle is not matching, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. And you're just completely, you're a Mary Magdalene.
I always thought about this situation, too. When you did something wrong as a kid, you have a hard time looking your parents in the eyes.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
You thought about that before?
I think you brought that up before.
Where, if you ever actually, you're talking about people that, if you go down the path that you just basically said, there's no way in hell I'm walking up there and taking the Eucharist. I mean, you've done everything wrong.
Yeah, but yeah. I mean, there's always, of course, and
throughout
throughout this whole process, there's always at any point, there is an opt-out button. Repent of that lifestyle and actually be born again. Confession. And no matter what trauma you're in, there's an option to get out of it. Mm-hmm. The thing is, it's not just going to the confessional and going, here's all my sins.
I'll see you next week.
And there's always the stories of people going in there and crying their eyes out and unloading all their dirty laundry at the priest and then leaving. You need to literally have a disciplined game plan on how you're going to fight every single mortal sin that you have. Yeah. If not, you're just going to be back there next week and the next week and next week, and then you're just going to be gone.
Do you remember the story, if you remember, tell it, the Padre Pio one? You said that woman just kept coming back saying that.
At some point, as far as I can tell, eventually, if you have a good confessor, if you're a Catholic, I would say that it's suggested that you find a confessor. You want to find a priest that eventually starts to really know you, so that you can actually have some sort of game plan on becoming a virtuous man or woman. Padre Pio, St. Padre Pio, I believe he was one of the many priests. I've heard a lot of priests do this, where once you have the same person saying the same exact mortal sins, they just say, we cannot forgive this anymore. You have not... The part of confession is repentance and the penance. You need to show that you are doing something to get out of this lifestyle.
Yeah, that's why
it's not a drive-through just to say, hey, I need to feel good about myself.
Yeah, that's why you say the act of contrition, what's the very end? To sin no more.
Yeah, and if you're lying to yourself and God if you're just going in there as a drive-through.
I mean, yeah, we all are human, of course, so we're going to
there's always going to be errors
here and there. But I just remember that story, Padre Pio's there's a movie that came out. He's yelling get the heck out of here.
Yeah.
And the people running out crying because he's done. He's not going to confess. He's not going to.
But there's always the point where you can only be merciful for so long. I don't know where this is written, but God's two hands. One is justice and one is mercy. You can only be merciful for so long until the hand of justice is going to get. And it's sort of like the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old Testament is justice and the New Testament is mercy.
When you were a kid, when did you learn the most? When your freaking parent yelled at you or hit you?
Yeah. I mean, you'd always kind of want some mercy, but if you push the mercy part too far, then you need to have a hammer to come down and pretty much crush what you're doing. But, so severing the ties with God permanently is just leaving the sacramental life. And that is, you don't even receive the Eucharist anymore. You don't even go to confession anymore. You've broken all your baptismal vows. And this is not a product of knowledge. That's the important part. It's not like people that leave the church, they figured something out. This is the part that doesn't make sense, I'm out. It's almost always some sort of, as far as I can tell, it's almost always some sort of desire. Some sort of emotional desire. Typically, it's people living a promiscuous lifestyle that want to continue living a promiscuous lifestyle, then end up leaving the church. But also, there's people that do it for wealth reasons. There's many different types of reasons why people would leave the church. But typically, it's not the knowledge aspect, because there's no way everyone would have read all of the church fathers, all of the councils. Like, until you go through that whole process, you wouldn't. There's not really a good reason to leave the church, but. So once you leave the church, then there's the forbidden bonds aspect. And it doesn't have to go in this order, and it doesn't have to even be all these. I just know that everyone knows somebody who has gone through at least 1, 2, 3, and there's more of a list here. And it doesn't always have to go in this order. Sometimes, you fall in love with someone in high school and you get knocked up, and then this whole thing is just going to follow a different path. And we know a lot of people that have done that. And then it's just a different process, but then it's being fake married by the state. You're and then basically this is also giving godlike abilities to the state. And for I'd say mostly people on the right wing who are very skeptical of the government, having your son or daughter get married by the state, you are giving them godlike powers. You're pushing God away, and you're going, this state has God's ability to unite these two in marriage. And
just a piece of paper. Yeah,
it really is just an insurance. It's just to get the insurance claim and the tax dependency whole situation set up. It has nothing to do with actual marriage.
Because marriage is 3 people, not 2.
Yeah, and that's the important part. I actually had that written down here. I'm glad you brought that up. Marriage is not actually complete unless God is in the sacrament. For Catholics, it's the sacrament of matrimony. It's sort of, marriage is sort of a general term, but the sacrament of matrimony includes 3 people. And that's why divorce is impossible in the Catholic Church, because you'd have to have all 3 people consent, and God would never consent. And so it's impossible to get married. It's impossible to get divorced.
Love it.
Now, of course, there's the exceptions of, what is supposed to be, minimal of, what's it called, annulments, where, people lied or they kept things secret.
Yeah.
They kept things secret before marriage, and they kind of lied their way into a marriage.
Child abuse, anything.
Yeah, they have certain things that, of course,
drug use.
But, and then there's the seclusion, and that is just moving away from the tyrannical ways of your family. Because if you're from a traditional family, they're going to be in your ear about, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing this. And once you're like so many steps in, you're thinking to yourself, I got to get away from these people. Especially, I would say the women are definitely more, whenever they fall in love, they're almost always willing to just do whatever the guy says or does. And that's how a lot of these abusive relationships
they didn't fall in love. They're just addicted to their,
they're addicted. She's addicted to his attention. He's addicted to other things.
The pleasure. They're not. It's not real love.
Yeah, I mean, there could be some, but
it's not real.
I mean, I don't know how it could be if like, especially whenever you're talking about the situation we're in, where it's always just built up traumas and leaving the sacramental life and God behind, starting to leave your family behind, and then now I'm talking about the part of like just moving away.
Love to me.
Huh?
It sounds like love to me.
Yeah, I mean, people can delude themselves with some crazy things, but then you move away, and then you seclude yourself. A lot of people start getting rid of their friends. You would have known them back in the day. And with the idea of like leaving the tyrannical traditional ways of the past. Oh, we don't do that anymore. We don't need to be married in the church.
Come on, they don't need that.
Yeah, it's like this was only the tradition for 2,000 years that built Western civilization, and I'd rather just get married.
Nothing's better than when you hear when someone's like finds out that the couple's living together and they're not married, and it's like, oh, that's the
trend. It's like so pure degeneracy,
immortal sin.
Yeah, like so like this. These are all just the trend. More like.
Oh man, nothing honestly pisses me off more than that when I hear shit like that.
Yeah, well, because we've heard it so many times at this point.
Oh man.
And I mean that is the problem though. Like the culture hasn't seen this before, so it's like everyone is just trying to deal with this a different way. And so
even getting pregnant out of wedlock, the excuse is, well, they were getting too old. They just wanted to make sure they got their kid in.
Yeah.
Before. Wow. Like I've heard that so many times.
Yeah. We've all heard all this stuff.
Yeah.
So many times.
There's excuses. That's the thing. They just keep throwing in excuses, and then all of a sudden, no one's getting married anymore.
Yeah. And then there's the big pharma thing, and that is drugs. Well, basically just humans are only capable of handling really so much stress. And so whenever we're talking about all of these traumas and you're screwing with your hormones on birth control, even from the man's side, St. Augustine said that, like, my heart is, how did he say it? My heart is empty. Do you know the quote?
Which one?
The one about, like, I'm restless until it rests in you.
Yeah.
There's something in man that wants to live according to nature and according to God's law.
It's either that one or what's the other one that says, I'm jealous of the drunk because, is that a different, is that completely
Well, that's like one of my favorite ones, but it's
not
kind of different.
Okay.
Not really, yeah.
But no, yeah, you're
heart's restless until it rests in you.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's something just in everybody that if you're living a lifestyle that is contrary to nature, you got to get on the pharmaceuticals. And if you're going to kill yourself, get on the pharmaceuticals. It's better than killing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And in the age that we're in, it's a very unnatural age. It just sucks that people have to profit off of your issues.
Oh, yeah. Once you're on, good luck.
Yeah, and so the best way, of course, it's just realizing that being in a state of mortal sin is not this detrimental to your soul. Like, if you die, you go to hell. But it will slowly rot away your physical nature, your biology, your chemistry, like your hormones inside of you.
You start looking like shit.
Yeah, I mean.
No, there's no.
And so you'll be on this steady dose for the rest of your life of pharmaceutical, and you'll get on one pharmaceutical, and it's gonna maybe cure one thing, but it's gonna screw something else up, and then that'll be 5 years later. You'll have to get on a new pharmaceutical.
Oh, they basically just counteract, and it's where do you even, if you want to even try to get off it, where do you even go? It's like that game Jenga. What are you pulling? Because it's just gonna collapse.
Yeah, that's good. It's a good analogy. Yeah. Yeah, so that's the big pharma situation, and then of course it gets sad because then it leads to the bastard children part. Now you're bringing children into this mess, and if you're not married in the church, it's all legitimate. And so now you have children born in the fits of passion instead of the bonds of love with God's blessing. So your children are just formed in a different way. And then of course there's the bastard children question. You have illegitimate children. As long as you're not born in the church, that ends up becoming a problem as well, because if you're just married by the state or not married at all, the children are born in a fit of passion, and not through the bond of God and of two families coming together and the whole community and God blessing this marriage with a descendant of the apostle there with you. It's just different. And so now you have a bunch of illegitimate children. Basically, America is becoming a nation of bastards.
Pretty much. I mean, I can name you many people that we know that.
I mean, it's gonna get way worse than it ever was.
Oh yeah.
But basically, because no one's getting married in the church.
That's the thing too. What man? I mean, it kind of sucks to say it like that, but like, what man is gonna want to take on someone else's children. I mean, you hear stories of like, oh man, I'm so glad this, they thank the stepfather for coming in their life and stuff like that. Yeah, you got stuff like great stories like that. But that's a huge, like risk as a man coming in and taking over, like,
oh yeah, there's a lot of
woman's
risk.
children.
Yeah, she will always take his side.
In the
over
end,
yours.
no matter what the fight happens, the daughter or the son be like, "You're not my actual father."
Yeah,
That's
it would always
the
come down to
end
that.
result.
It will always come down. That the mother's responsibility will always be to her children over her husband.
Yeah, and then because if it's actually his children, he has.
Then he's got an actual say.
Yeah.
Thanks. So that would lead me to my next point, and that is, I mean, typically in situations like that, it's just one or two children. And that's the problem with society, is that we're just not having enough children born in America. And that kind of goes back to the next point of the schooling and the unfiltered technology. So you're creating these bastard children, and you have issues in your relationship. And so you're just giving your kids the iPhone, the iPad, the video games. Just go to school, they'll teach you about everything. We don't know anything about God. We don't even go to church anymore, right? This is like the parents speaking here. But they think that their kids are going to somehow find a good path to becoming like a good father someday.
Yeah.
In like a situation like this.
School's a joke.
And like the school's not going to teach you anything good about religion. They're going to teach you that you came from an ape. And not just an ape. Because you came from an ape, but the ape came from pond scum.
Yeah.
Yeah. What'd you say? Shit cell?
Shit cell.
Yeah. So that's that progress.
I forget who's the
delusion.
Who's the scientist for that one? Is that Freud?
I have no idea.
The shit cell one?
We all came from just a algae on a pond.
I mean, that's evolution. I guess no one came up with that. That's just the evolution theory.
Well, Darwin came up with that.
Darwin, that's it.
Yeah.
I don't know why I said Freud.
But yeah, they're going to teach you that your kid came from pond scum, whereas you should be teaching your son or daughter, also having some sort of private schooling with good mentors in your life, that you're basically like angelic. That you are a descendant of God, not of pond scum. Huge worldview difference.
Mm-hmm.
You will act totally different. You will act like an ape if you think you came from an ape, and you will act more like God if you think you came from God.
That's the thing. So, like, even if you believe in evolution, where did the soul part come in at?
Oh, I've heard plenty of them just circling around in a lot of debates.
It's
always like, well, we've developed a conscience so that because it's more profitable to live together. So we have a conscience to make us feel bad about screwing with each other. So they just, there's always like this, well, we just developed everything.
Yeah. I'd love to get in a conversation like that.
Well, the thing is, they can say whatever they want. They don't have to prove anything. They just say evolution. It's their God. Anyways. Then, of course, in situations like this, the very next logical step for most people, and this is why the divorce rate's 50% or more, is divorce and single motherhood. And now those two children that are likely illegitimate, not really recognized their union in the first place, now they have no male figure in the family. He's going to move on. And then you have a mother with all of her traumas. She's going to put that on her children. If she has any sons, she's going to treat him completely differently. She's going to have this anti-hatred, this hatred towards men involved.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, too. Because I've heard the mother starts treating the sons like crap because they remind him, because
he's half
her of him. Yeah.
Because, he's half of whatever. And then she's going to train the daughter to be very anti-man. And she won't have any she won't have any good men models in her life.
Yeah, she'll grasp on any man she gets her hand on because she doesn't know an actual father, or an ideal man, because she's never had one in her life. Which we also know many of those people.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing. We're not talking about one person here.
Yeah, it's not hard.
We're literally talking about 10, 20, 30 different people that we've met over the course of from high school, university. I've known people like this in the military, workforce. We've known people. We've been around just long enough to know our generation.
And it's not hard to recognize them all. Like you can, when you see it, when you're aware of this, you will see it night and day. You could see just have a conversation with a one woman. It's like you almost can tell kind of like how they've been raised and if they've had to, like, it's not hard to see.
Oh,
And
yeah.
same thing with a guy. It's like if he's just around effing everything he can get his hands on, it's like, you definitely are lacking a parent in your family somewhere. Like,
Or at least, like, he might be there, but maybe the dad was just working all the time.
yeah, there's something lacking. Yeah, I don't know.
And then basically you end up in a situation like this where you have no church community, you have no nuclear family, like your family's divorced, you have no extended family because you left them, you've sworn them off because they were trying to save you 10, 20 years ago
Mhm.
by just being like, maybe you shouldn't be with this guy, you shouldn't be in a relationship with this guy. Fast forward 10, 20 years, now you're like this single mom hating,
Coming back and be like, why didn't you tell me I was doing it wrong?
yeah, I mean, you're on all these drugs, your huge body count, it's...
I mean, it's actually disgusting.
I mean,
if you think
disgusting,
about
and
it.
it's extremely sad that anyone even has to go through this. Because, Christian civilization is ended, and it's sad that Christian civilization has devolved into this. That this is a norm. It's unfortunate, because those kids born in that situation, they're not going to be CEOs, successful business owners, president.
Nope.
They're going to be cogs in the machine. Their bodies, they're going to be going to university, taking out tons of student loans.
It's a matrix.
At the very minimum, they will be living the same lifestyle as their parents, if not adding in
Worse.
homosexuality, adding in transgenderism.
Mhm.
They'll be taking the logical next steps to take it a little bit further.
Or just become an NPC, which we've talked about that.
Yeah.
You just wake up, smoke a bowl,
Yeah,
watch
play
TV.
video games.
yeah, and that's it. Repeat.
Yeah, get on the system. And that's unfortunate. But here's the situation. The way that I think that people should deal with this is not to just say, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. It needs to be enforced with love. And that's the difference historically difference between Christians and the Pharisees. Jesus was constantly calling out the Pharisees for this, of you worship the law. He was messing them with them, about, because they couldn't even explain the law. And Jesus was more of the aspect of, you have to have mercy. You have to enforce the law, but you have to have mercy. And that's the thing. It's not like parents, and I understand Generation X didn't really have the internet. But that's not really no excuse at this point. The internet's been around for plenty of time.
Mm-hmm.
You could have figured it out by now. You need to find out answers to these things. And not just to say don't have premarital sex because the Bible says not to. It needs to be backed with, and there's plenty
Facts
of
and
studies
logic.
and things like that. There's plenty of things backing it up saying, daughter, I love you with all my heart. I tell you you're beautiful every single day and I want the best for you. Here is a flow chart of where your life will go if maybe you'll luck out and not end up in any of these bullet points that I mentioned.
I mean, yeah.
But there's nothing worse than if you go down in this path.
That's the thing. A lot of people, I mean, maybe it's just something I've always heard. Maybe it's actually not true, but how people just gotta learn by mistakes. Is that even a true thing?
Yeah, but if you've gone through this entire thing, you're not learning shit.
No, I'm saying you could tell your daughter all this stuff. She's only gonna learn it when she actually
Yeah,
goes through it.
but it was just really unfortunate if she has to go through
Yeah.
all of this to then get divorced and have your
To
two
learn
kids,
something.
and then you're 40, and it's like, no, now I understand it.
Yeah.
It's kind of the point of the family and listening to your family.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's many reasons to have a family, but that's at least one, is that there should be a tradition there of elders that you can trust. And the
Good role
elder
model.
men, there's good role models that you can trust, and there's always the women in the family that are there for, even if the men are on you. Typically, it's always the women that are always have that open arm of you can come back,
Yeah.
please come back. Whereas the man is come on, you got to stick to the laws here. And that's that great balance between male and women. But yeah, I mean, we're going 50 minutes in this podcast now, but
Is that all the points?
that's mostly all my points. All I basically have to say is people need goals. People need to understand their history, and they need to understand try as best as they can to understand where the future's going. I like to look back at how the Roman Empire fell in the late 300s, the year 300s, in the early 400s is when the collapse was happening. And there were families that existed in Rome during that time. There were, pagans maybe being converted to Christianity, and then you have like the historians call the Dark Ages and the Middle Ages. But so in the 400s until the 1400s, so 1,000 years go by, you have those families, and so all the degenerate families would have slowly died off, because in this process that I just explained, which is a very natural process whenever the culture goes to crap, any good traditional culture that has its golden age will reach something similar to the one that I played out. It's just unfortunate that we had like the peak. We had Christianity, Christian civilization, the greatest civilization to ever exist, and now everybody knows somebody that is not just one person, many people are in these situations that I just spelled out. But what I'm saying is, all those degenerate people, their descendants and their descendants, those illegitimate children, eventually get to the point of, I don't even want to procreate anymore. Like, I don't want to bring children into this world. And so those people die off. The ones that stay are the ones that stick to the good traditions, and they start creating businesses, and they stay close to God. And then over the course of 1,000 years, they dig their roots deep and pass things on generation to generation. And like, I'm just bringing, my example is Italy, but a lot of those Roman pagan families, over the course of 1,000 years, during the Renaissance, like the Sforzas, the Della Roveres, anyone that knows a lot of history, those families 1,000 years later everyone knows their names, and they are cardinals in the Catholic Church. They are business owners. They are governors of different regions. And it's just a beautiful thing that like you could really plant your roots deep now. Like in America, our country is very young. If anyone needs a goal, dig your roots now. Get married, dig your roots, establish a strong foundation of laws of whatever religion you are, preferably one with a strong apostolic succession. I don't know how I would ever defend Protestantism, but at least with Orthodoxy or Catholicism, you can have a very well established law and a priesthood that comes from the actual apostles, and stick to that, and then start your own businesses, and build a small local community and allow the truth to flow, and to raise great children, and in hopes that within 500 to 1,000 years, your family and several other families there'll be so much interbreeding with the whole local community that you will literally be like, everyone will be related to you. Like, that's the point of like a community, is that at some point, like, almost everybody is kin of your community, and like everyone has their certain thing.
And you do anything for each other, and that's how a community grows.
Because the American model is bring over a bunch of immigrants to a city, have them work in some mill, coal mine, whatever, and then that moves out, and then everyone there gets addicted to drugs. They're on unemployment. They all start dying off, and then you bring in a new group of immigrants, and so it's the immigrant game. It's like a bunch of nomads. The American culture, there really hasn't been much of an American culture, but there's definitely potential if people actually stay where they are, dig roots, keep family close, keep faith close. There's a chance that in the next few hundred years, you can actually have a very successful family and be well known in your communities. And that's at least my goal, and I hope that everyone, if someone needs a goal, make that your goal. Like, if you want to have motivation to like have a family, start a business, be successful, do something like that. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, but that's the thing though, with the way what you just said and everything, I think guys are having a harder time finding virtuous women, and that's the first step to the whole thing.
Yeah, and that's the unfortunate part, and that's why I think that our enemies.
20 people before you get married.
Yeah, and that's the unfortunate part, and that's the struggle for all men today, at least and this is of course the men's perspective is what we're dealing with, as men as a whole, is we want to do that. But it's a multifaceted thing, because you got being strong in your faith, starting a business, educating yourself, and then there's of course they're always going to come down to a huge motivator for man. There's always like the flesh aspect, but I would argue that there's even the higher motivator, and that is having an heir. For a man, it's a lot of just going to work it's difficult to do if you don't actually have like an end goal. And for me at least, half the time I'm like, I wouldn't even be doing this if I wasn't planning on having a family and children someday to like pass this all on to. Like, what's the point of buying things if it's not going to be passed on?
Or even teaching yourself things.
Yeah, like what's the point of teaching yourself stuff if you're not going to be teaching it to somebody else?
And I think that's where the whole motivation of, I sit here and wonder how people in their 30s, 40s, 50s can still go to work.
And you don't have kids?
Yeah. Well, no. Kids, no kids. It all makes sense now because you're not just going to work, for yourself.
Yeah.
You're supplying your family for, like, the sports that people want to get into school, the private schools, all that stuff. That is a major motivational to me.
I think I was like, probably like a 1 year into being in the workforce. It hit me that I don't give a crap about any of this. I don't even want to be doing this.
Yeah.
This is all bull crap. The only reason why I'm actually doing this is, for family. And to like save up and hopefully to give a better life to some other kid that, I end up possibly having someday. So, and like I said, key takeaway here. At any point of this whole chain that I mentioned, you can stop at any time. You can stop where you are, go to confession, throw it all on a priest. That's what he's there for. Take part in the sacrament of confession, which at least the Orthodox and the Catholics have. Again, I know we live like in a largely Protestant country, which is on the heavy decline, at least the Protestant side of things. But they don't have like heavy sacraments. So all I have to say is maybe look into the Catholic and Orthodox churches. We're Catholic, so of course we're going to promote the Catholic Church, but actually have a sacrament where you're in dialogue with God and his successor, or his basically his like instrument on earth.
Well,
the priest.
The problem thing with Protestants, they don't believe that. They think that the bread and the wine is just their symbols. We believe it's actually truly the body and blood of Jesus. So
with the Catholics and the Orthodox. Catholics and Orthodox, everything is very mystical. There's a very, very spiritual realm behind everything, whereas with Protestants, it's very symbolic. And I don't know how anyone could go through the motions of just symbolism. It would be hard for me to go to church if I knew that I'm just going through the motions of symbology. Yeah, but knowing that it's a sacrament changes everything completely. But yeah, just end up going to confession, throw your heart out at the priest, and just beg him to help you with a plan. And if he doesn't help you, find another one. We've had some great priests. I've had some amazing confessors. Essentially great. It's like anything. It's like we were huge in the gym. Everything is like the same exact thing as like a gym program. Here's what you eat. Here's what you work out. Yeah. Here's your results.
So, yeah, I was gonna say they'll give you something to help you out.
I've been in a confession one time where he handed me a planner for my week to work in days of prayer. That was the Latin Mass, actually.
Dang.
And I've been other ones where he's like, say these prayers during these times.
Hey, you had a better experience. He destroyed me.
Well, no, he destroyed me too. But he's like, here's a daily planner, and here's how you and he literally handed me multiple pamphlets.
Oh dang.
He was one of those crazy, not crazy. Like, he actually wanted me to get to heaven. Find a confessor like that, but. We're at an hour in this podcast now, but you have anything?
We'll wrap it up here.
Yeah, and like I said, this chain can be broken at any time. You just have to realize your family members that are on you about this stuff, they're doing it out of love. Mm-hmm. The people that are just going along with this delusion with you, I don't want to say that they don't love you, but they just feel like they don't have another option. I don't know really what else to say about that.
Well, like friends and family. Like I feel like it's mostly friends, because for some reason, maybe because you're still young, you're in your 20s. As most time this stuff happens. Like you're gonna choose the side of your friends than your family for some stupid reason. I was there. We all were there. We're like, you think your family isn't looking out for you. It's like, oh, you're friends, but meanwhile, like your friends. Half the people I was friends with, I don't even know them anymore. My family's still here.
That's the pattern.
But
yeah, it's just unfortunate because I feel like a lot of parents end up being like captive, and they don't even know what to do.
Yeah.
Am I going to lose my son or daughter? And maybe they'll go through the motions. But everyone else just lies to them.
You gotta stay stern.
Because the easy answer is just to go to anyone you meet. Oh, that's a cool lifestyle. I'm with you. That is the weakest thing you can do.
Oh, yeah.
Just to always promote what anyone says. And not just abandon the truth at the first sign of any sort of, this person might not like me anymore. That's the biggest sign of a coward. Cowardice is a sin. And that's all I have to say about that. So,
check out our top 3 videos. I actually have them this time. Top tobaccos of 2022. Bag In by Country Squire. And Second Breakfast by Country Squire.
and make sure to comment, like the channel, like the video, but comment, because I am curious, for solutions. We live in an age where these things are changing very often. Throw in any comments you have. Do you like this list? Have you seen this before? What have you done in your families to try to change these things? Because we need to start building communities wherever we're at. So I'd really appreciate it if you guys comment on the channel. But
and also we're gonna have our wilderness video coming up.
oh yeah, we just got out of the woods last night.
Yeah, last night we went to the Allegheny Forest, Morrison Trail. We'll be posting some of that. We're gonna set up our affiliate page with Amazon. Because in that video we've talked about some of the stuff we used. So that'll also be a link. Once we figure this link stuff out, that all the links will be on there. We're just haven't had time. We'll eventually get it on there.
Yeah, slow and steady.
But
yeah.
we're gonna try to post Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But we'll see about that.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for watching. Hopefully you got some from this. Stay tuned for other videos. Peace.
We'll be right back.